A moderately aged man named Lemuel Gulliver awakens in his untidy New York condo and continues with his morning schedule. He converses with his superhuman toys on a rack and dances in the shower, showing us his silly side. Gulliver works in the sorting room of a New York news organization. That day, he meets another worker named Dan and gets to know him. Gulliver is Dan's manager in the mailing division. As the two deliver their mail for the afternoon, they go over Gulliver's long-lasting crush, a columnist named Darcy Silverman. He has been infatuated with her for a really long time, but has never admitted it. Soon thereafter, Dan draws out a notice that says he has been elevated to the head of the mail division on his most memorable day. Gulliver has been working in the office for quite some time, yet nobody there regards him. Dan claims that Gulliver is terrified to talk and won't ever advance in his career beyond his sorting room job. An upset Gulliver is leaving the workplace and notices Darcy burning the midnight oil. He gathers fortitude and goes to her cabin to ask her out. In any case, his nerves defeat him, so he gets an arbitrary paper from her work area and heads out. Darcy inquires as to whether he wants to apply for a travel writing task. An anxious Gulliver agrees and needs to present a travel blog the next day. At home, he reorders a few articles from the web for the blog. The next day at work, he submits it to Darcy, who is impressed by his composing abilities and furnishes him with another assignment. She wants him to travel to the Bermuda Triangle and compose an article about the legends of boats mysteriously vanishing there. To dazzle her, Gulliver agrees. Darcy organizes a contact and a boat for him. Gulliver flies to Bermuda the following day, where he is met by a man. He takes Gulliver to a rented boat and shows him how to use it. The excursion is simple as the boat is automated. Gulliver finally sails for the Bermuda Triangle alone in the boat. For the first few hours, he lives it up by perusing how to build a robot magazines and drinking a few cans of Coke. He soon nods off. A little while later, he awakens to a gigantic wave before him. An ocean storm hits, and he quickly puts on a life jacket. The boat shakes vigorously in the water. Gulliver pivots to see a massive sea cyclone coming his direction. Gulliver, with his boat, is sucked on top of the cyclone and then solidly into its center. The screen goes dark. At the point when Gulliver wakes up, he can't move his body. He peers down and is astounded when he sees several small men standing on top of his chest. Their chief presents himself as the authority Edward Edwardian of the Lilliput. The camera zooms out, showing us a horde of little individuals waiting around Gulliver. He is stuck to the ground with little ropes and wood. Leader Edward refers to Gulliver as a monster. A befuddled Gulliver shouts in dread and breaks free from the ropes without any problem. Feeling that this is a fantasy, he takes a stab at shutting his eyes. Edward arranges his troopers to cut the monster down. The fighters connect their snares to Gulliver's genes and make him fall oblivious. At the point when he awakens, Gulliver finds himself attached to a truck and being maneuvered into the realm of Lilliput. The little regular folks emerge from their homes to get a gander at the monster. He is maneuvered into the Imperial Royal Residence and introduced to the Lord of Lilliput, Ruler Theodore. The ruler's daughter, Princess Mary, feels sorry for Gulliver and inquires as to whether the restrictions are vital. Edward assures that Gulliver is a government operative from their foe realm, Blefuscia. Gulliver finally talks and asks the ruler where he is. Ruler Theodore's secretary, Jinx, tells him that he is in Lilliput, the best country on the planet. Gulliver thinks this is a trick and asks the non-existent cameraman to show himself. In the following scene, we see Gulliver detained inside a cavern. He meets an individual detainee named Horatio, who is condemned to life by Edward for attempting to court Princess Mary. The two are drawn closer by Edward once more, who pays attention to them, alluding to him as weak as. When a furious Edward threatens to detain them forever, Gulliver claims faltering ass means somebody who is valiant. Content with the response, Edward takes both the detainees to a field to furrow it with the assistance of Gulliver's strength. He restrictions Gulliver with a machine. All at once, 2 rings of a bell are heard from the royal residence, showing that Blefuscia has gone after. They are attempting to grab Princess Mary and have lit a fire at the castle. Edward rapidly races to the royal residence and orders everybody not to save the princess, as he needs to be the one to save her. However, Horatio requests that Gulliver do it since Edward can't reach her in time. Gulliver effectively brings the Blefuscian officers down and saves the princess. However, the ruler and his secretary are caught in the fire. Gulliver, in a rush, pees on the building. Everybody applauds him when he stops the fire and saves Lord Theodore. The Lord removes him and Horatio from detainment and thanks Gulliver for his courage. He likewise invites everybody to a dining experience around evening time to praise the occasion. Edward is furious to see another person being praised for their dauntlessness. At the feast, the Lord asks Gulliver where he is from, and he answers he is from Manhattan. Individuals assume that Gulliver was the leader of Manhattan, as he is the most courageous one there. Gulliver feels like a legend without precedent in his life, so he fabricates the story, claiming he was known as President the Great. Everybody trusts him, except Edward. The next day, individuals of Lilliput build a huge home for Gulliver with all the facilities he couldn't get when he was in New York. The Lord sends a pursuit party to search for his cleaned-up boat at Gulliver's solicitation. Gulliver likewise makes them fabricate a theater to fit everybody in the realm. Then, he shows them a performance of the sinking Titanic, claiming it to be a real-life story. Everyone is astonished by the sad life he has had. Edward asks how he was saved after drowning, and Gulliver assures that he was revived. Later, Horatio asks Gulliver to help him dazzle Princess Mary, and Gulliver agrees. The two go to the royal residence, and Horatio approaches the princess. A hidden Gulliver recites the lyrics of the melody, Kiss, making Horatio repeat them. Toward its end, the princess starts to fall for Horatio. However, she is caught by Edward, who has come to court her. The two have been bound to get hitched as Edward is the boldest in the realm. Princess Mary isn't attached to Edward, but can't dispose of him. Elsewhere, the pursuit party finds the cleaned-up boat with cans of Coke. Gulliver comes to the scene and finds his telephone is still working. He has 12 voice messages from Darcy. It turns out she is angry to have discovered Gulliver's counterfeited article. She needs to now sail on the same path Gulliver came through to do the Bermuda Triangle research herself. Gulliver presently doesn't want to return to New York and face her, so he decides to permanently stay in Lilliput. Edward is unsettled about the choice and tells the ruler he is dubious of Gulliver. The ruler excuses him, asserting that he confides in Gulliver. In view of his visit, the Lord provides Gulliver with the title of the new general and downgrades Edward to vice general. A jealous Edward switches Lilliput's safeguard framework off, making it simpler for their foes, Blefuscia, to attack. Blefuscian officers and their lord see this and plan to quickly go after Lilliput. They approach the realm through waters and launch cannonballs toward Lilliput. Being the general, it is now Gulliver's responsibility to stop them. He apprehensively steps into the water and starts to splash it around. The cannonballs don't affect Gulliver, who is gigantic compared to them. Eventually, he overcomes the Blefuscians and becomes the savior of Lilliput. All the people of Lilliput satisfy Gulliver's desires. They even form a model of Times Square so he would feel at home. They change their apparel to match that of Gulliver's. Officers are designated to trim his hair and give him massages. One evening, Edward barges into the princess' chamber. He asserts that it is his entitlement to come in at any time because he courts the princess. The princess finally reveals that she doesn't love him and doesn't want him to court her anymore. A furious Edward leaves for Blefuscia to request help from their lord. Edward's men have found the Build Your Robot book Gulliver had on the boat. The Blefuscian lord consents to help him build a robot using the book to fight Gulliver. Occasionally later, Gulliver is at the model Times Square when the chimes of the castle ring, suggesting an intrusion. Gulliver prepares to fight tiny people, but is shocked when a colossal robot, being operated by Edward, stands before him. Edward challenges him to a duel. Gulliver has no choice but to accept. He tries to push the robot, but it is much stronger than him. It grabs Gulliver by his jeans and makes him accept his defeat. Gulliver also admits that everything he said about him being the president was obviously false. The ruler and the princess are astonished to have been deceived by him. Edward sends Gulliver to a forbidden place called the Island, where we dare not go as punishment. When Gulliver is left there, he is picked up by a giant young girl. It turns out the island is the home of giants. The young girl thinks Gulliver is a toy and keeps him in her Barbie house, dressing him in silly pink clothes. Meanwhile, back in Lilliput, Darcy's body appears on the shore. Gulliver had let everybody know that Darcy is his princess back home, so Edward recognizes her and detains her. She meets ruler Theodore and his queen in jail, who have been captured after Gulliver's defeat. Horatio sees this and decides to head out to the island where we dare not go to get Gulliver back. He is minute on the island and figures out how to securely reach Gulliver. The young girl's storehouse also has a skeleton of a dead US Air Force pilot. Gulliver uses the parachute to escape and fly back to Lilliput. He first goes to meet Darcy in the jail and confesses that he has feelings for her. She pardons him for plagiarizing the article and seems to open up to him. Gulliver has decided to challenge Edward for a duel. He doesn't want to prove his grit any longer, but truly wants to help Lilliput. The next day, the two stand before each other, ready to fight. Gulliver believes that Edward should give the realm back to ruler Theodore if he wins. However, assuming that he loses, Edward will obliterate the realm altogether. The two fight, and Edward dominates him in no time. Horatio rushes to help him and figures out how to get inside the robot. He overcomes Edward from inside, eventually depowering the robot. From that point forward, Gulliver effectively manages to overcome it, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Even Darcy applauds the victory. Because of Horatio's courage, he is given consent to court Princess Mary. The two finally kiss. However, all at once, Edward, who has reached the point of insanity, abducts the princess, but the princess, at last having enough of Edward, knocks the traitor down in frustration. Darcy then kisses Gulliver for the first time. The Blefuscan ruler and Theodore are about to start the conflict once more, but Gulliver stops them. He effectively helps reconcile the adversary island countries by discussing Edwin Starr's war, and finally, he, along with Darcy, returns to New York City on their fixed boat. Cut to a few weeks later. Gulliver has left the sorting room job and is a travel writer now. He and Darcy are in a blissful relationship. Gulliver has recently completed a travel task, and the film closes as the two leave Darcy's office while holding hands.